All right, it is 5 o'clock. Looks like our waiting room is clear. We had about 40 sign up, so there may be some others joining us, but we'll go ahead and start. I do want to remind everyone we are recording this and we'll put it on our YouTube channel later. If you happen to miss the Q&A for remote learning or food service last week, those are also on the district's YouTube channel. So if you just go onto it, you should be able to search those and find those. Some quality watching if you have a few extra hours in your day. A lot of questions answered there too. I will post this one along with scripted answers to the questions that came in ahead of time and whatever shows up in the chat. If you have a question that you didn't answer ahead of time, please feel free to put it in the chat. If I'm not able to answer it, Jana Hare, our Director of Curriculum and Assessment, is also running the background, so she can chime in and answer some of those questions. I thought I would start by just maybe walking through what we are expecting a typical school day to look like from start to finish, and then let you guys just ask questions. I think that's the purpose for today. So we are encouraging all families to take the temperatures of kids at home before they come to school. We have to take them again when we get here, but at least that gives you an idea if there's a temperature that's going up or is already at that 100.4 degree level. It saves everybody from having to call and then getting you back from work or on your way. So even if you do take it at home, we are still required by the health department to take it either upon entry to the building or entry to a school bus. So the kid rides the bus to school, they will get off the bus. We will not take that temperature again because we will be under the assumption they had it done prior to getting on the bus. Kids who enter any other way, we will have the temperature stations at the front of the building. We will have 3 adults. We have a nurse dedicated to this building this year, and then 2 other staff members who will be taking the temporal thermometer temperature scans. If a student happens to be at that 100.4 or higher, we will very discreetly get them inside, give them a chance to cool down to make sure it wasn't just a symptom of getting here in the heat or being outside. If it tests again after a few minutes, then we will have to make a contact with parents to have the student picked up. Once they're in the building in the morning, they're either going to go to breakfast or they're going to go to the gym if they're here before 7:55. They're here between 7:55 and 8:05, they go straight to the classroom once the temperature is taken. For those who are eating breakfast, they will be able to eat breakfast like normal. They will be distanced, and then we'll have them stay in the cafeteria until there's time to go to class. Those who come in early, like between 7:30 and 7:55, who aren't eating breakfast, we're going to have them in the gym. There will be spots sectioned off by class. So they'll be able to sit with their cohort group in the gym until it's time to dismiss. When the bell rings at 7:55, we will dismiss them in sections to go to class. And once in their cohort group, they'll be in that group for most of the day. We do have regularly scheduled hand washing times, regularly scheduled recess breaks throughout the day. Some of them are going to be recess. Some will be just simply outdoor breaks as often as possible. We have designated 7 different areas around the building as outdoor learning areas, so teachers can schedule those as they need to with their classes. They want to take a lesson outside, and as long as the kids are 6 feet apart, they'll be able to take their masks off at that time. So I think you'll probably get a note from your teacher saying, hey, if you have an old towel, send it, because we might be sitting on the grass at times reading or doing some lessons, so they have something to sit on. They'll be going to specials in their cohort group as well, and they'll be going to 1 per quarter. So if they have PE first, they'll go to PE every day for the first 9 weeks, and they'll go to music, library, art on a rotation throughout the school year. They will also eat lunch in their cohort groups. We'll have our lunch tables set up to where there'll be distance in the cafeteria and in the gym, so we'll be able to utilize both spaces, and then have traffic flowing so that the kids who are unmasked, there's not a lot of traffic crossover with the kids who are taking their trays, because they will have to stay masked from line until they're actually eating, and then when they're done, they'll have to put it back on. All of the food will be packaged, so there'll be no utensils, no sharing of scoops, and nothing. Everything will be prepackaged or pre-served. If you want more information about how the food service is going to look, I would recommend the food service video. It's not a long one. I think it's only about half an hour, but it goes through the way you can order meals ahead of time on the app to speed things up and to avoid any sort of transaction of kids bringing in lunch money. So you'll have an opportunity to order your meals ahead of time the night before, and students can still do it. That's the day of in school, but just another option for you as parents to decide what you want your kids to have. Let's see, end of the day, We'll dismiss in sections, so we'll dismiss in staggered. Bus kids will go first, and we'll stagger our bells every couple of minutes to release a few classes in each hallway at a time for those who are not bus riders. So that's really a very, very brief overview of what's going to go on from start to finish. We're trying as hard as we can to make it seem like a normal school day, despite all of the restrictions and COVID measures we have to take. So that's really what that'll look like. I'm going to go through and I'm going to read. I've got some questions from those of you who registered ahead of time, and I'll answer those. So if anything else comes out of that, please feel free to stick it in the chat. So this one says, will temperature checks be given on the forehead only? Thermal scans given on the wrist are as or more accurate as the forehead and have less long-term health risks. So that one, we are using what our nurse and who has been working with the health department has been given as far as regulations, and that is what we're going with, which is the temporal forehead thermometer scan. How do students sign up for classes on Acellus? Once everything is in place with Acellus, we will send out notifications to all the remote learners. You'll get your password, you'll get your login information, and there'll be information on when to pick up devices if you asked for those. We'll be able to get those to you. We really want that information to come from the teacher, the remote teacher. So as soon as they're back on duty, and they don't start until Wednesday. So some of these things we need them to do for us, and they're not on contract until Wednesday. So things will start moving a lot faster once they get back here in a couple of days. So that will be sent to you. When we'll receive remote learner logs and passwords, same question. How will we receive that notification or the actual devices? It'll be a pickup, so we will have you we'll arrange a time for them to be picked up at the building. So whatever school your child attends, that's where you'll go to pick up the device if you requested one. If your child is a remote learner and you haven't requested a device, it's not too late. You just need to email me and let me know, hey, I need a device, or put it in the chat right now and I'll write it down. It's not too late to do that. We have plenty of devices for our remote learners. We just want to make sure that we give them out to you guys. And just so you know, our devices are going to be iPads. Chromebooks will be really just for the junior high students. I believe, Jana, is that correct? Just the junior high students? I think the high school and elementary schools will have iPads, and they'll be able to handle Acellus. That we'll make sure they have what they need on them when you get them home. And they will be able to set up to where they will hook up to your home internet. So they'll be able to transfer from the school network to your home network. Let's see. When will schedules for remote learning be sent out to families? Again, once our teachers are back, they're going to go through, they're going to meet with Dr. Hare on Wednesday to go over some of the specifics for remote learning. So they'll get all that out to everyone. I had a question about Bus Barn for routes. And I really can't answer bus questions, but I will tell you, if you contact Russ Harding, either by phone at 594-RIDE, and Jana, if you wouldn't mind put that in the chat, or email him at rharding. He's the one that can answer what time your child might be picked up and how long the route will be and any of those other specific questions. I did ask him about bus sanitation because that was another question that's here later on, but I'll answer it now. He said that, so the question from the parent was, what's the cleaning procedure? Are they distance? And about windows. He said they are planning to open as many windows as they can. He said we have to be careful because a lot of our routes, our rural routes, are dust on gravel roads. So if we have all of them open, then there's also a risk of some other respiratory complications from having the bus full of dust. So they will have some open for circulation. He says they are not distancing because students are masked. They will be required to have that on. And he said if we were to distance the kids on the bus, our 10 routes would turn into about 35 routes. So in order to not have that happen, they're going to allow kids to sit closer together, but they do have to be masked. And then the buses will be disinfected nightly at the conclusion of the evening routes. So if you need more information than that, I know that's not a lot to answer that question, but if you want more depth, I'd say give him a call or email him at the number that's in the chat. So let's see the next one. It says, if we go online to online schooling, will we supply iPad like we received in March? We need to find a computer. So if you're a remote learner from the beginning, you can get a device. If we have to pivot, and I say if because I'm optimistic, if we have to pivot to online learning for everyone, this device your student uses at school will go home with them. So I believe our third graders are going to have iPads with a keyboard case. The fifth graders are going to have MacBook Air, and I think the fourth graders are going to have MacBook Pro. Whatever they're assigned to at school that they will use exclusively, that no one else will share with them, they'll bring that device home if we have to pivot. So if we find out on some Tuesday that Wednesday is going to be at-home learning, they're going to take that device home with them on that Tuesday. Hope that answers that question. If it doesn't, please put it back in the chat. What online time is required per day? I'm going to make the assumption that that's a remote learning question. So the answer to that one is 360 minutes, just 6 hours of learning. That does not have to be screen time. So what we're telling our remote teachers is students will have some Acellus lessons to complete in language arts, math, science, and social studies. The amount of time that it takes for that is going to vary by student, because some kids will take longer to complete a lesson than others. They don't necessarily have to complete a lesson in a day. It could be a lesson that takes the course of several days, but in general, the total minutes for the day are 360. And we're asking the parents, because we are not physically there to monitor that, you're signing off that your child met that requirement. So Acellus will tell us, here's how much time they spent on the computer part, but we're relying on the parent to say, okay, they also did this activity and this activity. They read for this many minutes. They had this much physical activity. They did this project. So I'm signing off that it was 360 minutes. And when I say sign off, it's going to be digital. You're going to be able to go in and have a learning log online. So you're not going to have to keep track of paper. And we have to submit that. That is essentially our attendance to the state of Kansas to say, yes, our remote learners were here, they were engaged in learning, and they did complete the required minutes. Different, same thing as if we had students on site, we say, yes, they were here in attendance on these days. There are no supplies, as far as the supply list needed for remote learners, there aren't really any that we're requiring. If you run into a case where your child is doing a project and you need supplies from us, feel free to ask. So if it's something you don't have at home, we can help supply that. But we've asked them not to make it so it's too unoriginal. So try to think about things that families have at home that they might be able to have access to when you're talking about projects. Because we have asked the remote teachers, they will have boards, like learning activity boards. So when your child finishes their Acellus, here's a list of all the things that you can do to add on to that, to get to that 360-minute time limit. So the actual supply list itself, if you're a remote learner, I would not go get those unless you just feel like you want those in your house. For those kids who will be attending school in person, what can we expect and should when schools get shut down? Can more specifics for how it will look be given and how much time will be spent in front of the computer? So think about this. So remote learning is going to be remote learning the same the whole time. So now let's talk about, we're at school and now we have to go home, because that's, I think, what this question is about. We've asked our teachers, again, when you're designing your lessons for in-person, think about how those can be easily adapted to go home. So we're using the Google Classroom platform in school this year so that when students go home, one, they'll be familiar with it, and two, they'll know how to get in and out of their assignments. So we're expecting that learning will continue at home as it has been at school. There will be times where the teacher may have a class meeting. They may be giving lessons through video and students can watch them. We understand in that pivoting situation, because that's not a situation anyone signed up for, there will be some more flexibility in terms of, we know that the student might have to work on their schoolwork at different times because of childcare and parent working issues. So the pivoting option for on-site is going to be under the direction of the current classroom teacher using the devices that they brought home from school. And again, once they get back in person, my recommendation is when you have your back to school night and meet the teacher night, that's a question you might ask your child's teacher. Can you give me a little insight into what it's going to look like when we have to pivot, or if we have to pivot to learning from home? Because I'd rather they be a little more specific than me giving you just a general answer. I had answered the one about buses. Please describe how my kid will be paired with an IC teacher for daily check-in. Will there be one teacher assigned to all virtual kids? So going back now to remote learners, we do have two remote teachers. We have Mrs. Joe Hines and Mrs. Allison Nice. Mrs. Hines is going to be doing remote for the third graders, Mrs. Nice for the fifth graders, and then we have split the fourth graders between the two of them. So there's about 52 remote learners in each of those groups, and they will be contacting you to set up whatever their daily schedule looks like. We are asking them to do a morning check-in, like a morning meeting as they would if they were here. So some of those things will be set. Some of those things will be as needed check-in throughout the day. They are available during the school day, just like our in-person teachers, for support, for phone calls, for emails, for video conferencing. They're going to be here every day, just like our on-site teachers will be. And so and we'll find those out pretty soon. You'll get notification of which one of those, if you're a parent of a fourth grader, which teacher you'll be assigned to, and they'll probably be reaching out with an email with some information. Those are all the paper questions. Make sure I go here in the chat. Jan, is there anything in the chat that I missed?
One just came in that I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay, I joined late. I apologize. I had the bus questions and I missed it. You started off with that one. Yes, so the bus questions about sanitation, I'm assuming is sanitation. If it's a route question, please contact Russ. And Jana, can you bump that one back in for her since she missed that one? As far as the bus procedures, they will take a temperature before they get on the bus. They will have to be masked, but no social distancing on the bus just because of numbers on routes. Windows will be open to accommodate for airflow, and then the buses will be sanitized nightly or disinfected nightly with a Clorox 360 product, the same one that we're using in the buildings after the kids are gone for the day. Again, if you need more specific than that, Russ would be your best bet, so I don't say something that's not accurate. And I think Jana answered the question about library books. All remote learners have access to library books. In fact, they'll be accessing the same way our on-site students do. So students have a library class in the day. They won't be allowed to take books off the shelves. So Mrs. Boyle will have activities for the library for those students. But to check out books, they have to go through it's called Destiny, the application that we use. It'll be on all of the devices for remote learners and the devices for the on-site learners, and they simply go in and request. There's a catalog they can browse through, just like an online library. They can pick out what they want. Mrs. Boyle delivers it to the classroom. She picks up the books to bring back, and so we'll circulate the books to keep them within that cohort group. When they come back to us in the library, they're quarantined for 96 hours before they go back on the shelf. So that way there's a limited number of people who are touching the books. You're guaranteeing you're not taking a book off a shelf that 3 or 4 other kids came through earlier and touched and looked at.
Dan, teacher assignments for the in-person students?
So those it's going to be a little different this year. So sometime on September 2nd, I'm giving the lists to the secretaries on September 2nd. I got to finish them up tomorrow. They're almost done. I got a few last minute changes to make. And then by 4 o'clock on September 2nd, they'll be in Power School. So if you log in to your parent portal, like you did for enrollment, you'll be able to see the teacher's name there. You won't be able to see who the classmates are. They won't know that until that Meet the Teacher night next week. But you'll be able to see the teacher assignment starting after 4 o'clock on the 2nd. It may be there before 4 o'clock. That's just the deadline we're giving for. They should all be in there by then. And we do have, it's not a question, but I will remind everyone again, we are doing a supply drop-off to recognize that typically that's something that happens on that Meet the Teacher night. The kids bring their supplies in so they can walk in school the first day without having all of their stuff. So on that virtual Meet the Teacher night, the teacher can go over like all the stuff in the classroom, but for the supplies in person, we're going to do that on the, let me check my calendar real quick to make sure we're doing that on September 3rd and 4th from 8 to 4, and then also the 7th, so that, or the 8th, that night before school, that day before, 8 to 4, our office will be open. I'm planning right now to have it drop off in the gym. I still need the health department to sign off on that, to say it's okay for parents to come into the gym for 30 seconds to put a bag down without having a temperature taken, because we're just going to seclude the gym, make the only room anyone can access, but I have to clear that. If they say no, it'll be outside or in the front entryway. We'll just put the bag down. We'll have it sorted either by class or by grade, and you can leave the stuff there, and we'll get it down to the classrooms. Kids don't have to take it on that first day. And that'll be from 8 to 4. Staff won't be available. They'll be in either workday or in service. So it won't, we'd love to have kids come in and tour and see their teacher, but that's all going to have to wait till day one.
And for Meet the Teacher night, will the links for virtual meetings come from those individual teachers?
Yep. So once they get back and are working on those, they will send those out. Here's the link for our classroom. we're going to set it up on that night. I believe our time is from 6 to 7. We staggered so the PC and the junior high are before and after us. And our teacher is going to do 2 sessions. So they'll have this duplicate session for 2 30-minute duplicate sessions during that hour. So you don't only have to make one of them if you have other students that you need to view in on. So 6 to 7 on the 8th. It's taking the place of our in-person Meet the Teacher night.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about eating lunch? So the different procedures that the kids will be doing for eating on their own.
Yeah. So and I think the question is for kids who bring lunch on their own. Really, for the students who bring their own lunch, it won't be much different than last time. We are going to start, as much as we don't want to, we're going to start by assigning them a spot, simply because we don't really need to have them looking around trying to find a spot when there's a lot of unmasked kids in the cafeteria. So they'll be able to go right to their spot if they brought their lunch and start eating. The students who are in the line will get their prepackaged meal and take it to their spot.
What about using the microwaves?
Yeah, I'm still waiting on some guidance on that one, because the logic says that's not a good idea because we're touching the same microwave with our buttons. But we're still looking at that, see if that's a doable option. I hate to take that away because I know a lot of kids who bring their lunch rely on that to heat things up. If we have enough personnel in the cafeteria to handle doing that for them, because we can put gloves on adults much easier than we can have kids do it. And having someone stand and wipe it down is probably unrealistic. So we're still looking into that one. So I would say if I had to guess, if you want to start planning, I would say no, probably not going to happen, but if we can find a way to do that, we'll still do it. Other questions? Great questions. We got a small enough number so we could Jana, we could just let them unmute themselves. We could take away that mute. So we've given you the option to unmute yourself. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, feel free to do that. I see one here about what recess time will look like. So we're going to have, the idea is we're going to have, instead of 2 20-minute recesses, we're going to have 4 10-minute recesses, or break periods where they go outside. We don't want all of the grade level to be on the playground at the same time, so they are going to stagger it by class. We may have 2 classes going out at a time. That's still a small enough number with our class sizes that there's plenty of room for them to spread out, be 6 feet apart, take their masks off. We are going to tell them, like, if you want to be next to someone, you do have to have the mask on still, so that 6 feet of distancing takes effect for that to come off. But we'll have a small enough number for the recess time for those to come off. In addition to those areas around the building, those 7 areas that we defined don't include the playground. That's a separate area just for recess. The other areas of the playground will be for teachers to take their kids out at different times. Question, will remote learners have virtual Meet the Teacher? Yes, they will be part of virtual Meet the Teacher night. So they'll be doing the same thing during that same time frame as our on-site folks. What are the class sizes? So right now, 3rd grade. So here's, just today I hired another teacher because our 3rd grade classes were up to 17 and 18, which in a normal year is great. But in a COVID year, we want to be a little smaller. So 3rd grade classes will be 13 to 14. 4th and 5th grade classes will be between 14 and 15 students each. I believe that there may be one 5th grade class that has 16, but that's the sizes. And those will stay that way unless we have new students who enroll. Everybody that we are expecting has been enrolled. Those are pretty solid numbers. If we need to move to at-home learning in the hybrid model, how will we be notified? There's several different communications processes we'll have to go through. We won't make that decision. It won't come from me. It actually will come from the Douglas County Unified Command and our nurse. They will make the determination of who that impacts, whether it's a student and a class, whether that's a grade level, whether that's a building. So once those come down, we'll notify. It'll be email, it'll be phone, it'll be the notifications like it would be if there was a snow day or we were canceling school. We'll do it through all of the means we have to make sure we catch everybody. I always encourage you too, if you have any kind of change, whether it's an email or a phone number, put those in PowerSchool. You can do those anytime. That way, if something happens and you forget to change your phone number, you don't miss a call or you don't get the email sent to the wrong place. A question about, do we need to call ahead to drop off supplies on the 3rd, 4th, or 8th? No, you don't. It'll be just a come and go event, drop and go event. And whether it be outside or in the gym. Prior to that, each of those days, if there's weather issues, we'll even if we can't have you in the gym, we'll figure out a way to get them in so that they'll be protected till we get them to class. Other questions? Feel free to unmute and shout them out. Teachers call this wait time, and we realize in Zoom you have to make it even longer because somebody might be trying to unmute and trying to talk. If we have a bad weather day, do we go hybrid that day, or is it like a normal day off due to weather? So if Mr. Dorothy cancels school for a snow day, there's no remote learning, there's no hybrid learning. It's simply counted as there's no school that day. We do have, I believe, 4 snow days built into our adjusted calendar. So we really want to hope for a not very snowy winter, so we don't have to go to school past that May 30, 31st. Because anything beyond that we would have to make up. So this will be one of those years where we'll get 4 feet of snow. But that will be no school for any learner on a snow day. Others? If a family member tests positive, the student should be quarantined and monitored for symptoms. Will they have the option to go online for the time they are home? Yeah, so we will have, it will be no different than if we have a child who's home, the chicken pox or sick, they will have the opportunity to participate to some degree with their class. So the teachers are thinking about that in their preparations of, how do I make sure if I've got one kid quarantined or if I've got a couple of them quarantined, how can I still provide learning? So they would still be directed from the classroom teacher. It would never be remote teacher. It's always going to be that classroom teacher. And the decisions about who gets quarantined, again, those all come from the medical professionals. They have to tell us, here's who's got to do it, here's how long they have to do it, and here's when it starts. They will definitely have access to the learning that their class is doing. Great questions. Keep them coming. I don't want to keep everybody's time is valuable. I'm going to hang on the line for as long as I need to. So if you don't have anything else to ask, feel free to drop off, but I'm going to hang out. Jan and I will be here for a little bit. So feel free to take off, enjoy your evening, or stick around and ask another question. And again, thank you everyone for their time. Appreciate you taking the time to ask the questions.